Okay, so we have got a great panel for you here, still following up in our business and social and movement. So I'm going to turn it over to Rena. Go ahead.
Derek, thank you very much. As much as I love my fashion, I also love women at the top of their game in the tech sector and finance. And joining us right now is Ellen Blair-Chube. She is Vice President and Chief of Staff to John W. Rogers Jr., who's Chairman and CEO of Ariel Investments. And in her role, she's responsible for providing strategic and operational support. She helps to set his agenda, translate the firm's short and long-term vision into actionable strategies for his leadership team. And in July 2012, she was named one of Today's Chicago Women's 100 Women to Watch. In December 2014, she was named one of Crain's Chicago Business 40 Under 40. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
Welcome to you, Ellen. And also joining us here is Karen Martell, who leads marketing and partnerships at Square, the payment startup whose mission is to make commerce easy, and they sure do, especially in a taxi cab, I have to say. Square has disrupted the financial industry and lowered the barrier of entry for small businesses since its inception 6 years ago, also doing a lot of help in the nonprofit sector, which we're going to talk about. And prior to Square, Karen worked for Endeavor. It's a nonprofit that selects and supports impact entrepreneurs around the world to drive economic growth. So welcome to both of you. Ellen, I want to start with you. Tell us a little bit about why, when it comes to an investment company, Ariel is very different.
Ariel is very, very different. We are not a traditional finance company, and that's one of the things that I love about it. First, I would say that at its core, it's a very progressive institution that lives its values every day. There's strong ethnic and gender diversity, starting with our leadership, John W. Rogers Jr. And Melody Hobson, both African American. Our leadership team, 70% of our department heads are women. I'm one of them. Our community involvement is unlike no other, I think, firms at our size. We started a small public school 17 years ago. It was before charter legislation started here in Illinois. It's called Ariel Community Academy. It's a CPS school, but there's a very innovative financial literacy curriculum that's a part of it, which we think is very special. We're very, very proud of the students that come out of that school every year. We support large civic institutions here, from the Symphony to the smaller startups like MoneyThink, which is a financial literacy startup that was created by Ted Gonder at the University of Chicago. They're doing amazing work down there. We're thought leaders on everything from financial literacy to diversity in finance to retirement savings. We want finance concepts to be a part of the kitchen table conversations for women and communities of color. And lastly, I would say, we do all of this because, it's core, it's a part of our core values, but also we think it makes a lot of business and economic sense. We think that it attracts greater talent. We think that we're able to recruit the best and retain the best. And I was one of them. I came out of the public sector. I spent 10 years in Washington, D.C. doing financial services and economic policy. And I joke that I did the people's work for so long that it was kind of weird to think about going to the private sector and to like a finance firm at that. But I do think that Ariel has felt like home because it lives those values. I think they're constantly looking for impact, and it's felt like a very natural transition from the public sector to a firm like Ariel.
Karen, you also started off in the public sector. How did you make that transition from public going into business sector and also technology?
Yeah, so I studied international relations. I was really passionate about economic development all through school and wanted to figure out the way I could have the greatest impact. And I pursued it from all angles. First started with a nonprofit. I was teaching on a moving school bus throughout sub-Saharan Africa.
A movie school bus?
A moving
school
yes.
bus. Oh, okay. So what's that?
Yeah, new thing. And then I realized I could be an advocate for education, but there maybe would be no jobs available. So I thought, okay, I'll try policy. I went to DC. This was all during school, and thought, ooh, this is kind of slow, and this is hard. Not sure if this is the right avenue. And then I eventually worked for an NGO in Switzerland and did a lot of trade work on behalf of developing countries, and realized that at a macro level can really drive economic growth. And so I went into business, which I thought had always been kind of bad and super boring and something my father did. And I did consulting out of school and saw the work that Google and Cisco was doing internationally and just became fascinated and incredibly passionate about it. And that led me to doing business development in emerging markets, all focused on technology though. Moved to Argentina, worked with a nonprofit that was all over the world in emerging markets, and eventually to Square.
It's incredible, and many of you, I'm sure all of you know about Square. You just put your credit card right through. It's literally a little square thing, allows the merchant to pay for their things without, I mean, it totally blew apart the business industry.
Yeah, it started with enabling businesses to accept credit cards on their phone or tablet, and since has evolved to much more. So really helping businesses of any size to start, to run, and to grow. So things like reporting and analytics and inventory management, or even capital to open a brick and mortar location, going from a food truck to an actual retail business or a restaurant.
I was surprised to learn backstage you were saying that their huge sector you're helping now is nonprofits.
Yeah, so I think, thinking of this audience and what's relevant, and Square enables nonprofits to do a lot of fundraising. So we used to see these big spikes during gala seasons or even during political campaigns, enabling you to have a lot of staff out accepting payments on behalf of a cause. So that's kind of the first iteration, if you will, of how Square can add value to nonprofits. The second is really for nonprofits to just use Square to run their business. The efficiency that it can bring from just managing your employees to tracking down all your sales. We have an app integrations like accounting, for example, so you can actually save a lot of hours on accounting or bookkeeping services. And then most recently, we launched something called Square Cash. So Square Cash enables nonprofits to get a cash tag, just as you would a Twitter handle, and to be able to accept payments online. So you set up your cash tag, say Karen, and people can donate to that cause. So we did this with UNICEF in the wake of the Nepal earthquake. We've worked with RED, Khan Academy. So this is another service that's available to anyone who has a cause that maybe you're not face-to-face with someone, but you do want to collect money, or and it's a great way to do so.
So you get your handle on Twitter, and then you do like hashtag Save Nepal.
It's actually get your cash tag, so it would be cash.me/Karen.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
And then that's an easy way for people to donate and save money.
There's also an app, but
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay, we're going to plug it all today. I love it.
You can see, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Ellen, you were also talking to us about the nonprofit sector, and there used to be a time when nonprofits would have the big finance guy come in and invest their portfolio to help them grow, but now you're saying nonprofits actually care about what they're investing in.
Yeah, it's one of the trends that we're seeing in the socially responsible ESG investing, impact investing space. For a really long time, nonprofits and foundations and endowments, they were doing God's work on the programmatic side. You know, they were investing in nonprofits or different avenues with grants, et cetera, and a lot of the focus on their mission was solely on the programmatic side. But lately, we've seen a number of larger institutions as well as smaller nonprofits say, why are we ignoring the governance of our nonprofit? Why are we ignoring these huge endowments that are traditionally we give them to, whatever consultant, and they invest however they like? Like, what about the other 90% of what we do? And how do we leverage those resources to also impact our programmatic mission? So we've seen a number of nonprofits and foundations start to focus on that. They have coined it mission-related investing, and we're really encouraged by it because it's, I think, a number of millennials, women, everybody under the sun are now recognizing that how they spend their money, how they invest their money can be used towards impact, and they want that money to be a part of the solution, not the problem. And so we, at Ariel, we are at our core, I would say, we are patient value investors, but we don't believe that strong financial returns have to come at the expense of social integrity. So we're on a number of ESG platforms. We've been ranked as a top, performing socially responsible fund because of the screens that we put in, and we just are so very encouraged about what nonprofits, foundations, other large institutional players that are coming into the space. We think it's incredible.
And on that note, Ellen, do you have any recommendations about helpful financial literacy curriculum for everyday people?
Sure, there's a lot out there. One, just broadly on financial literacy, just not impact investing or socially responsible. I actually, before I went to Ariel, I've followed Susie Orman. I did before I went to Ariel. We also have a number of resources on our website. We answer questions from individuals and have frequently asked questions and Melody's Mail, as we call it. There are a number. Yeah, she has, we do videos and she answers questions from people that write in. She's often on CBS and Tom Joyner's show, which is still going. But then just normal publications like Money Magazine, Green Money, I also like to read. It's an e-journal that focuses on impact investing. There's a wealth of information that's out there. The Council for Economic Education also has a lot of information for if you're thinking about getting your kids involved and you want to start learning to, or if you want your kids to start learning about money and having those very honest conversations with them about money. I'm happy I can tweet some more if you like, some more places where you can find them. But we're very encouraged about all of the wealth of information that's out there and the focus that people are giving this now.
Okay, Ellen, we're going to look forward to that tweet then later today, okay? We're looking forward. Hashtag MCON there, too. I want to ask you too, because the technology sector, just like finance, I find sometimes technology can be so intimidating if you're not in that field. What's your diet like? How do you find out what's buzzing out there when it comes to technology?
Yeah, so I'm in the heart of it, surrounded by all these companies, so we're completely biased, right? We all follow TechCrunch, and we have tons of articles that go around every day. Square has started something called Town Square Blog, so it's a way to kind of say, okay, if you're a small business or a business owner, here's how technology can help you grow. So that's one thing that I would point out. If also for some of these tech blogs that you can get a weekly summary or a daily summary, should that be of interest. But there is often a lot of noise early on with all of like the latest, greatest, newest thing. And then waiting to some of these companies get some traction and where it's a really refined, robust service and also a reliable one. Yeah.
Making sure that it really is making a difference there. How do you guys engage the young professionals in your companies with your philanthropic efforts?
Yeah, so that is one thing that I think has just been such an added bonus of tech companies. So Salesforce, I think, was really one of the leaders in this, where they had to one-to-one in terms of committing to people, technology, and resources. And so they really set the trend. And this was, over 10 years ago at this point. In terms of all these companies that are growing so fast and doing great, you have to also be doing good in the world. And so every other tech company has really followed in those footsteps, and everyone does it in a different way. So at Square, for example, we have Clean Streets on Friday. We're in a neighborhood that, let's just say, is evolving a bit. So we go out and clean the streets and try to get engaged in our community. We have a Square Serves Day every year where we're doing a lot of community engagement work. And then we have a whole list of different nonprofits that we can, if we want to engage in. Salesforce, people actually are mandated to say, okay, X% of your time you should be working with an organization. Google, Facebook, everyone's involved in some way. So I think a lot of what I heard yesterday was aligning your mission with other people who share that same mission. And I think there's tons of opportunities to do that in the tech sector, and then to also just get a way bigger audience and amplified voice by doing that.
You also talked, Ellen, about with Ariel, living values translates to how you invest. What does that mean?
So I would say that, well, one, I'll back up just a little bit because there's a range of investing. There's socially responsible, there's ESG investing, there's impact investing, and like a lot of styles of investing, there's a bit of a spectrum. And lately it's become kind of, I don't know where it's come from, but there's been this debate about what's better. And I frankly find that debate boring and unproductive because I think it's all important and it's all relevant. And I think that people should invest in ways that align their interests and their priorities, their access to particular products and styles, and frankly, in ways that align with their risk and return profile. At Ariel, we would say that we are patient value investors. We don't market as a socially responsible fund, but because of the screens that we put in, we don't invest in tobacco, we don't invest in gun manufacturers, we do a considerable amount of work on environmental considerations of the companies we invest in. But we do all this because we think that those areas generate a lot of black hole risk, like fundamentally, that they're subject to litigation, intense government regulation, and just kind of unforeseen headline risk that we've seen in the news as it relates to guns, tobacco, et cetera. So we just don't think it's smart, and it's a good investment model. But because of it, we have been labeled a part of this kind of burgeoning industry. And so that's how we would think about socially responsible investing at Ariel. But there are a number of mutual funds and other institutions that have been in this space for a long period of time, like Calvert Investments. To the newer institutions, you see the largest money manager in the world, BlackRock, announced in February that they were developing a unit that would be called BlackRock Impact, where investors would have access to investment products that help alleviate hunger or global inequality, et cetera. So, you know, it's a nascent industry, and so the standards and the spectrum are in flux, if you will, or kind of a little not as stable or such as you see in other investment styles, but we think that that's good, and we like that people are thinking about their values and things that they would like to accomplish in the community when they spend their money and when they invest their money.
Could I add one thing
Yeah,
to that?
absolutely.
So at Endeavor, the company I worked at prior to Square, Endeavor has a portfolio of companies all over the world, and a lot of people attach to different definitions. Oh, so is it all social enterprise? And I think it extends to investing too. And if we're too rigid in the thought, it really is, well, what's the need? What can have the greatest impact? And actually at Endeavor, I mean, at the time, I don't know the latest stat, but at the time it was about 10% were social enterprise companies. But we, as an organization, would say we are social enterprise. We're creating job growth around the world, social capital, intellectual capital, et cetera. But I think it's interesting that if we're too dogmatic on what the definition is, we could actually be missing what the true opportunity is.
Yeah.
But how do you, so many of us hit cruise control on our 401ks and what we're invested in, and we kind of let other people do it because it might not be our platform. But how do you go back and say, okay, what am I invested in? Like how do I pick things that have an impact, companies that are going to make a difference? How can you do that?
So advice I would give, one, if you're in your company's 401k, go to your HR person or whoever administers it and say, which of these funds here would market themselves as a socially responsible fund? And if there aren't any there, ask why. I've seen that actually in a number of organizations where just the questions from the employees, if there's not enough of a groundswell, they'll have another option there. It doesn't cost any money to add a fund to a 401k so that you have the option to invest. We've also seen it in areas of diversity where employees want their money to also be spent with women-owned investors or diverse money managers like Ariel. And because of that groundswell, because they don't want their money to reflect the makeup of their employees, they've added options. So I think that's first and foremost. If you have a financial advisor, they also can help with this. And it's actually one of the trends that we're seeing because more women and more millennials are interested in this space. We've not only seen more young people thinking about careers and as a financial advisor, but more women thinking about careers in this space. And they know the type of people, that will be attracted to a certain type of product, and because of that, they are becoming well-versed in it. So I think a lot of it's great that it's driven by the consumer, but those are two, if you're kind of thinking about your traditional 401k or finance kind of avenues. And lastly, I would just be remiss not to be up here and not put a plug for Ariel in. They would be very mad if they were watching this if I wouldn't say that you can invest directly in mutual funds, Ariel Fund being one of them, for a minimum initial investment of $1,000. We also do that if you don't want to do the chunk of $1,000, we do it monthly on a dollar cost average, but it's easy.
What's the word that you use, socially responsible? Is that what you would say to somebody if you're wanting
I would say if you're looking at the public market space, I would say socially responsible or ESG investing, which stands for environmental, social, and governance investing.
ESG. What do you talk about the tech sector? They're asking online here, does Square focus on helping any particular types of businesses start?
We work with businesses across all industries. So no one in particular. You could have a hair salon, you could have a restaurant, a cafe, dog walker. I'm sure you've all seen a Square in a taxi. So it really, really runs the gamut. I would say we provide services that are more relevant to certain businesses than others. So I think, some of the magic of Square when we first got started was that it was such a low barrier to entry to get started. Previously, you'd have to go to a bank and sign lots of paperwork, and maybe you wouldn't get approved because maybe you don't have a perfect credit score. Square enabling you just to get signed up and started within minutes and not having to go to a bank was pretty remarkable. So what this did for, I'll give an example of hair salons. That's pretty revolutionary. A lot of people came in first generation potentially, or maybe with not the best record, but really hardworking and really eager to build a business, and we enabled that. I think on the growth side, so businesses that maybe have been around and now are at the point of, being a small business owner is really hard. It's inspiring to me to see how much they do in a given day, but knowing, okay, how do I get this to the next level, and how do I actually fund that? So Square Capital, this is a relatively new product that we offer, but we've extended over $100 million in capital to small businesses to do just that, to grow. Wow. And we're able to do that because of all the data that we collect about these businesses can actually inform investment decisions far better than a bank. So there's this one company called Zero Friends. I wish I had a picture to show you, but it's this company in San Francisco, and they make monster t-shirts. Everyone who works there has lots of piercings, tattoos, big beards, and they just kept getting rejected going to banks to say, we really need more money. And so we actually reached out to them, said, hey, your business is doing great. Could you benefit from this amount of money to grow further? And they jumped at the opportunity. They were able to expand their inventory and thus grow their business. So I think it's kind of just breaking down an industry that honestly hadn't changed for so long, and making it a lot more democratic for businesses from all industries, all sizes.
So if I'm working full time, but I want to start my own nonprofit on the side, how easy? Walk me through the steps over at Square. How do I get started?
Yeah, so you could go to our website, so squareup.com, and you could download our app, and you could literally get signed up in about 3 to 5 minutes.
That's it.
Yep, you then would link your bank account, and then any payments that you receive, I do this honestly just for friends' trips and reconciling at the end, and that money is then deposited into your bank account the next business day.
It's pretty easy, and you get the Square thing in the mail pretty quickly?
Yeah, the Square Reader is free, so if you sign up online, we'll mail that within 5 to 7 days. You can also pick it up at a lot of 30,000 retail locations across the country. And another thing that a lot of people are talking about, this shift to EMV, which is happening in October, and Apple Pay, and we're trying to democratize that too. So sure, Whole Foods or these larger companies can accommodate that, but we've actually just announced with Apple a reader that is going to enable a small business, even someone who's selling things at a farmer's market, to accept Apple Pay and EMV cards as well.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Apple Pay is such a big deal. There's so many other things out there. How are you guys competing in that technology space to stay competitive?
We have always viewed Apple as just a phenomenal partner. So the way Square started was our co-founder, Jim McKelvey, he's a glass blower, lost a huge sale, and in frustration, he didn't accept credit cards, in frustration called Jack Dorsey, our CEO, and said, we got to make this easier. They were on their iPhone, and thus got to work on making it easy to accept credit cards on your iPhone. So from the beginning, Apple has been a phenomenal partner, and I think Apple Pay is just another example of that partnership. They, of course, want Apple Pay to become the new norm. I would love it too. Imagine not having a wallet and being able to go anywhere. Or if you forgot your wallet, not being stuck. And so by partnering to say, hey, Square, how could we make this possible for all small businesses, in addition to the really large retailers that Apple has already had success in connecting with? So definitely a strong partnership.
Sounds great. And since you guys have made transition here, is there any advice you have for people who are considering moving jobs across sectors? How do you make that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say for me, it was a lot about finding the right institution. I know I'm harping on Ariel here. I can't have I can't say enough great things about the company, but I was coming from the public sector. I hadn't worked at a finance firm. I had worked in the private sector briefly because I'm trained as a lawyer, but I had the background, the policy and regulatory expertise, but didn't know about investing and valuations, et cetera. But I found a place that valued the experience that I had. So there were things that I wanted to learn, definitely going to a finance firm, but it's important that they also appreciate everything that you're bringing to the table and that you can articulate that and that they understand it. And I think that once you define what it is you can bring to the table, but as well as what you would like to get from that institution, that narrative becomes a lot easier, and you can actually, it's easier for you to figure out those places that would be a good fit. And then for me, it was talking to a lot of people that did things that I thought were cool. So I said, I think that's amazing. I saw Melody Hobson was like a beacon of hope. You have this incredible force, black woman running Ariel along with Sean Rogers, and you saw her out speaking on retirement security and consumer protection, and it was just, it was inspiration. So, you have the opportunity, if you have the opportunity to connect with people that are doing the type of work you want to do, I'd also recommend you have those conversations as well.
I know, what is it about Melody? Anytime I see her on TV, I'm like, okay, Melody, I want to do what you're saying. It's something about her.
She's magnetic.
She really is. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, I would say if you're mission driven, that's really important. So Square's mission is to make commerce easy. We are all there to help small businesses. And when you're aligned on a mission, that is incredibly powerful. We do a lot of hard work, and it's amazing to see what comes out of that, but I really do believe it's driven by that mission. So first and foremost, I'm sure anyone who's transitioning from the public sector or from a cause or a nonprofit, you care. So that's good. If you pick an organization that you are aligned with, I think that's the first step. I think the second is people in business and tech are like, oh, nonprofit. It's just different, but it's all about positioning your experience and your skills in a way that's going to resonate. So the things that I would call out would be program and project management. I think this is something, when I first joined Square, I was so intimidated. I thought, oh no, I'm coming from a nonprofit. I'm not like everyone else from Facebook and Google and Apple. Can I even add value? And I was like, actually I can, right? Because any program that you run at a nonprofit, any project that you run, that is going to be this very similar parallel experience at a tech company. I think the other thing at coming from the public sector, you're used to keeping a lot of balls in the air, multitasking, and you're usually short-staffed and have a very low budget. So that's very helpful in any sort of tech or private company. So you can wear a lot of different hats. You can do things in a very scrappy way. A lot of people coming from maybe Google wouldn't be accustomed to that background, right? So I think those are the things I would stress. I would lead in your resume, kind of focus on those buzzwords that are going to really connect the dots for the recruiter and for the hiring manager. And then in those interviews, give clear examples that are going to be like, oh, well, that's exactly like this new product that we want to launch here. I think that would be my advice.
Okay, great advice. I want to ask you, Karen, about elections 2016. A question here coming in. Does Square have plans to enable political donations or make that process easier in any way?
Yes, I won't go into detail, but we are very actively working on that. We've helped with campaigns and fundraising in the past, and we have an amazing government relations team who's making frequent trips to Washington to talk about just that, both through our card reader, our point of sale, and then also via Square Cash, that other product that I mentioned.
Because you think about millennials in the 08 and the 12 campaign, the power that they've had in organizing a campaign and getting out there, and even money.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
And I think the millennials, our whole generation, I mean, we are accustomed to things being easy and fast. And so extending that to the political realm and to fundraising, I think is absolutely necessary. I mean, I was in a cab yesterday, it wasn't working, it was taking 7 minutes. I was like, do you have Square? And then he's like, yeah. And that happened in a minute, right? I was just out, and I think we want that. I mean, we were talking a lot yesterday about an ADD generation, or quick and easy, and so I think to get people engaged and into the political realm, I think it's absolutely paramount. and giving people that agency to say, yeah, this is a cause I believe in, this is a politician, a leader I believe in, let me help to do that, and even if it's $1, $5 at a time.
Are you noticing anything with the campaign cycle coming up with investments and that sort of thing, and millennials demanding more when it comes to that sector?
Not necessarily as it relates to the campaign, although we're very politically active. Obviously, I came from the public sector and still am involved in a number of races and support candidates. Our president, John Rogers, is very close. Actually went to Princeton with Michelle Obama and her brother. So we've been involved politically. It's also one of the other things that that kind of drew me to Ariel, that this is a place that you don't have to put that type of yourself, you don't have to like leave that on a shelf and then go to work, that we have Democrats and Republicans. There's always very spirited debate, and we get very excited for the elections that come up. So, but haven't seen a shift in investing as it relates to the cycle.
How do you partner with communities and nonprofits to ensure your investments are collaborative and solving core issues? That's a good one.
Interesting. Well, I would say that our investments in the community, there is a lot of collaboration there. So our philanthropic investments, as I mentioned before, are traditional investments that we do on behalf of our investors and shareholders follows a kind of a different model in the ESG realm. But there is a lot of collaboration that we do with nonprofits and the community here in Chicago. And we, circling back on the question that you asked before, we encourage our young people to get involved. We like to lead by example. I'm on the board of the Sue Duncan Children's Center, which is a 50-year-old after-school program that was started by now Secretary Arne Duncan's mom 50 years ago. And we give our employees the time and the resources, whether they're events. A number of our employees are active with our school. They tutor. There was a car wash a couple of weeks ago that we had a number of employees down helping the kids raise money. So we think that we are very involved and collaborative on the philanthropic end of our spend, but as how Ariel invests on behalf of our investors and shareholders is separate there.
On that note, do you have any examples, Karen, of companies that are changing their procedures because they realize consumers are seeking out socially responsible businesses? You were on the public sector, and what is the sense there? Do you feel that also in the tech sector that people are more aware that you've got to make changes in that way?
Yeah, I think it's definitely increased awareness across the board. So I think something I've seen even in San Francisco, which is changing just dramatically, and there's so many companies and so much new money and so many ideas, but there's an increased awareness of, well, where is this coming from? I would say buying local is one example. It's very Californian right now. But I think it also extends to, well, what about the products that I'm buying? So I think because there's so much visibility, there's so much access to information, and so much more transparency, that I definitely think there's an increased microscope to it.
I would piggyback on that. We've been seeing it a lot in a number of the companies that we look to invest in. A greater emphasis on their CSR departments, and not only having people focused on those efforts, but having it be a part of what they're bragging about, what in their pitches, how they evaluate their economic proposition. We've seen it more and more over the past few years.
You were saying earlier, Karen, don't let a good cause be a scapegoat. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think, I was thinking of what could the tech industry offer nonprofits. One of the things that I found in my past was like, oh gosh, this is so inefficient, or oh, this takes so long. So I think bringing really good business practices to a good cause, to a nonprofit, is very powerful. I've definitely seen in the past, oh, but we're doing such great work, and I don't think that can be a scapegoat for poor business practices. And I think it's particularly relevant in terms of attracting top talent and retaining that top talent, because they'll see that will be frustrating. So I think really running your business as good as possible and making sure you have the people to do that. And then I also think in terms of just retaining that talent, providing opportunities for growth. So a lot of these nonprofits causes, take advantage of the unique skill set that these younger employees have. So, and give them that ownership. I think that's huge. I see it with my team all the time. But for example, if you need a new website, or you want to be more engaged on social media, or think of how you can tap into a broader audience, these are the people that can make that happen for you. So I think it's important to recognize that, to give that ownership, and let them fly. I think that can also enhance the way in which an organization's run.
What advice do you have for millennials who are interested in the tech sector and using tech to really make a difference in the world?
Yeah, my advice would be to think carefully about what the company is. I went to school just south of San Francisco. I've been in this whole industry for quite some time, but honestly, I was very picky about what company I wanted to work for. And because for me personally, I wasn't excited about the latest photo app or dating app, or there's a lot of and it's all subjective, but in my mind, tech companies that aren't necessarily doing great things or having a huge impact in the world, but there are a lot that are. So I would say just carefully look at that. Think about, you're gonna be working a lot. If I'm working, lots of hours a day, I sure want it to be for something that I really believe in, and that I think is making a difference. And my team, we do a lot of work out in the field. We're talking to merchants, and in the end of the day, we're a professional services company, but we get hugs from merchants. We get like love letters from our customers saying, hey, you saved my business, or my kid is now in college thanks to you. We hired 3 new people, and that stuff, that matters. And if that's happening across the whole country and in our other countries we're in, that really adds up. So it is tech, it's business, but in the end of the day, it's having a great impact.
And I guess you wouldn't get that reaction if you were working for Tinder.
Yeah, I don't think
Maybe
so.
you would have.
Well, maybe if people ended up found the right match, who knows?
Rena, I just want to piggyback on that, because I think Karen's completely right, and I think that kind of what's going on the stage is kind of unique. I would say that we're unicorns, and not in like the billion-dollar company way, but to have 2 senior executives that are women in finance and in tech, I mean, it's rare. I like to joke that tech makes finance look diverse. It's like, and we really aren't. But to be able to succeed at companies, I think it speaks volumes for people like us. We want to go someplace where we think that we can provide value and grow and be valued. And so I think that speaks a lot as you're choosing where to go, whether it's in tech or in finance. Going someplace that reflects your values. I can't stress it enough.
We've got just a minute left, but I want to ask you two to give us advice for millennials who are watching right now, and they want to break into the tech, into the finance sector, or they just want to be a little bit more literate in that to help their endeavors in life. What advice would you give to them?
I would say start following some sort of tech blog, so you're just across the landscape. I would also encourage, there's a lot of conferences that are focused on tech that you can just watch from home. So that's a great start, just to get a sense of the landscape. And then I would also encourage to reach out to do informational interviews. So when I was just trying to get into business development in emerging markets, I was really young, naive, and I was just reaching out to all kinds of people. And I remember this one senior partner from BCG immediately responded to my email and jumped on the phone. He led their globalization practice, and he really set in motion my whole career in the path that I've taken since. So I pretty much always try to make time for informational interviews, and I think there is that firm belief and value across all of Silicon Valley of like pay it forward. Now, I caveat that with sometimes people are crazy busy and there's launches coming up and whatnot, but I think there is an openness to sharing one's experience and to offering that advice. So to the extent that you find someone and be like, that would be really interesting, it can't hurt but to reach out.
Ellen, we've got 30 seconds left.
Sure.
What would you say?
So I touched a little bit on the informational and finding companies earlier, but for those millennials that are looking to invest, one, I would say just know your value and your work, your value and your worth, excuse me. So just a quick stat, in 2018, millennials will overtake the baby boomers in terms of having the largest spending power of any generation, and that's at $2.75 trillion. that's a lot of money and that's a lot of power. And at the same token, you have 84% of that same group believing that a positive difference is more important than professional recognition, and 82% reporting that they are likely to engage in philanthropy, social entrepreneurship, and impact investing. So I think just to provide that a little bit of context, there's so much potential here, and I would say if you're at all interested in it, I'm happy to talk further. I'll tweet those resources just on financial capability, but know your worth, and if you want to have that impact in how you spend and how you invest, be intentional about it.
Terrific. Such great advice, such a great way to close this out. Ellen and Karen, thank you so much. We're going to look forward to those tweets later today with the hashtag MCON, and that'll do it for this panel. Thanks, guys. Thank you.